Hello and welcome to the print video. I am Sumi Sukanya Datta, and this episode is about HMPV or human metapneumovirus, which has created a panic like situation among people mainly because of reports of this virus driving respiratory infections in a large number of people in China. The Indian government, while announcing the detection of HMPV in a few patients in India, has assured that there is no need for concern. Also, that this is not a new virus, but confusion and fears remain. To discuss why this new threat or perception of threat has arrived and everything about HMPV, we have a very special guest. We are joined by structural and computational biologist Shekhar Mande. Dr. Mande was formerly the Director General of the Council of Scientific and Industrial Research or CSIR and the Secretary of the Department of Scientific and Industrial Research in the Government of India. Thank you, Dr. Mande, for being with us. First, tell us what do you make out of this anxiety around HMPV 5 years after the COVID-19 pandemic started?
I think a lot of anxiety and fear amongst people,
Mhm.
sort of panic, is unfounded. It's not necessary, primarily for the reason that HMPV is never going to reach the proportion of the kind of pandemic that we have gone through in the COVID times.
Okay.
HMPV has been a virus that has been common in the last few decades. It was first detected as HMPV in 2001, but even before that, HMPV infections were common. And therefore, there is no reason to panic per se about this particular virus.
Okay. But what do we know about HMPV so far, and how common is this virus?
The virus has been common every year. There have been HMPV infections every year. It causes very mild symptoms, running nose, sardi jukam, and a slight fever. But
Mm-hmm.
beyond that, it's not very dangerous. The kind
Okay.
of symptoms that it has are common
Hmm.
to some other viruses. For example, common cold virus, what we also call as rhinovirus, or influenza in it, what you call as flu. They have kind of overlapping kind of symptoms, and therefore people wouldn't even care to detect whether it's because of HMPV or is it because of common cold virus or is it because of flu.
Okay.
So HMPV affecting mankind in a very large sense, as the COVID did, is very, 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 very unlikely.
Okay.
So although the symptoms are very similar, but I think people should not worry about it.
So, I'm asking a very basic question, but I think it's important for people to understand this. So please, help us understand. Doesn't it take just a bit of mutation for a virus to, turn very pathogenic? Like SARS-CoV, for instance, had been in circulation before. It was SARS-CoV-2 which actually caused the COVID pandemic. So, what makes you confident, or scientists or the government confident to say that this particular virus HMPV can't really cause a pandemic?
See, what happens is that all viruses undergo mutations, right?
Okay.
Influenza every year, what we get in some geographical locations we get epidemics, and that's because of the different kind of proteins they combine together, the hemagglutinin and neuraminidase, and it actually mutates. Some viruses mutations lead to drug resistance. For example, in HIV, some of the mutations have led to drug resistance. So the basic point is that all viruses undergo mutations. Now, SARS-CoV-2 was a completely new virus. Although we called it a coronavirus of the second kind, but its receptor to enter human cells was very different, human specificity. And SARS-CoV-2 also, as we know, underwent large number of mutations. We had a Delta strain, we had a Omega strain, and so on and so forth. So that also underwent mutation. But every time it mutated, and over a period of time, we all started developing immunity against the virus. And as a consequence, what happened was the severity of the pandemic went progressively down. Even today, SARS-CoV-2, if there is an outbreak somewhere in some locality, the
Yes,
severity
yes.
of that is very less.
Because we
So
have been
viruses
exposed
do.
to it, and we are now there is population immunity against SARS-CoV-2, right?
Absolutely right. So viruses will undergo mutations. That's an evolutionary process because they are trying
Mm-hmm.
to adapt to the human host. But human host also becomes competent to deal with the viruses. And in this particular race, the human host actually does better to get better of the virus.
Okay, so these visuals of, some of them are largely unverified. Also, we now know there is no official word in from the Chinese authority, but these visuals of hospitals overcrowded, the crowd in crematoria, these don't look unusual and worrying at all. What would you say?
So I don't know where these visuals have come from. The mortality rate of this virus has not been defined. It's not very. It's not supposed to be very deadly. It affects
Mm-hmm.
only a particular small section of people, and I don't know where the visuals have come from. I don't think there is any word from World Health Organization yet on the severity of the viral infection, and I do not believe that this viral infection is that severe.
So in any case, you think all the anxiety, the concern, and also, the thing is that, in it's only largely the Indian media which is sort of overblowing it. So it's largely overblown, you would say, this concern.
Absolutely right. Today, I had some reporters in my office and they told me, "Ki, sir, but there are two infections that have been detected in Nagpur." I said, "What happened to them?" They said they were hospitalized. No, what happened to them? One of them has already been discharged. I said, "See, you are yourself giving an answer." So it's totally uncalled for. I mean, some people would get a bit severe kind of infection and perhaps might need hospitalization, but it doesn't mean that everyone who is going to get that. In fact, a large majority of people who are going to get HMPV,
Hmm.
they're just going to get away with minor fever or running nose or cough or cold or something like that. The number of hospitalizations is not going to match anywhere by any means close to SARS-CoV-2.
Yeah. So the government has now announced, like you said, two cases in Karnataka, some other cases in Tamil Nadu and Gujarat as well. But does this thing in a way suggest that, this virus particularly has not been on the radar of the government as part of its surveillance for respiratory viruses? Is it out of the integrated disease surveillance program that the government has? Because you've been part of the government, so you would know.
No, so what happens that surveillance is common. Uh, One of the lessons that we learned in COVID was we had to actually increase surveillance about any new infections that they come in or so on and so forth. And we also learned how to do quickly diagnosis of different viral diseases or even otherwise. And therefore, because of the increased surveillance or better surveillance, it could be actually picked up that disease because of HMPV. But
Okay.
that
So
is no cause for worry.
on flu cases, we don't tend to sort of, identify the viruses behind them, right? That is what it is.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay.
That's right.
Yeah. So you said that, like we discussed this, that this virus may not have the pandemic potential, but a part of the reason why everybody is anxious is also because, given the rise in zoonotic viruses and after the COVID-19 pandemic, the world has been on tenterhook that, some new virus may come and there can be another big disruption that COVID-19 caused. So which are the kind of viruses that you think should we be particularly on watch for, the governments and the health agencies should be looking for as part of their routine surveillance?
In the COVID times, all of us said that COVID-19 is not going to be the last of the pandemics that humanity is seeing.
Yes,
You know,
absolutely.
there are many pandemics which are around a corner, but in which form the pandemic will come in front of us is very difficult to predict that. We cannot actually say that this virus or that virus will cause a pandemic,
Mhm.
and we do not know yet. If we knew that, we would have definitely taken a step to combat that right now. But there is uncertainty about which pandemic will come.
So
But
there is a
HMPV
level of
definitely
uncertainty.
correct. But HMPV definitely is not part of that particular fear from any
Mhm.
government or World Health Organization perspective. Later on, pandemic, it's unlikely to cause even an epidemic in any of the countries.
Yeah. So there is also a scare around bird flu now, avian flu. It's been going on for some time, for last couple of years. In Nagpur now, there is confirmation that at least three zoo animals, which includes one tiger and two leopards, which have died because of H5N1. Do you see any sort of concern? What message will you like to give to our viewers about bird flu, avian flu, and also to health policy makers?
Flu indeed is a bit more concerning than HMPV. That's because flu virus mutates very rapidly, changes its code, and has the capability of escaping immune response. And that's why one actually can get the flu every 2 or 3 years of a different kind. And apart from that, there are these two keywords that you said, H and N. They stand for hemagglutinin and neuraminidase, which are part of the viral code, and they undergo mutations. And consequently, all the sugar moieties that are attached to this hemagglutinin and neuraminidase on the surface of the virus, they also change very rapidly. And because of that, the virus itself changes its character every few years here and there. And different kinds of H's and N's, when they combine together, that's why we call the fifth kind of H and first kind of N. That's what you call as H5N1. And there are many different kinds of H's and different kinds of N's. And that therefore represents some amount of threat in the coming years. But
Mm-hmm.
I believe the surveillance mechanisms all around the world have improved to the extent that flu definitely being on radar, it would be detected very early if there are any outbreaks, and hopefully it will be actually we can get mitigation for against flu at a very rapid time.
Yeah. So, like you said, and many other scientists are saying that that next pandemic may actually be just around the corner, and it just a matter of time of when, rather than whether. So, if God forbid there is another pandemic, do you think India is better prepared to handle it as compared to the last time? Because the memories of the last time haven't really vanished yet.
Indeed, I mean, I would very proudly say, and then I'm also very proud that I was a part of the government when we were handling the pandemic. And there are many things that we earlier had not done. We started doing that on our own. And in a true spirit, I mean, what we see actually some sort of Atmanirbhar, this thing, we became totally self dependent on handling many, many things on our own. So we have learned big lessons, not only worldwide, but also in India on how do we actually handle emergencies such as a pandemic in future. So when the next pandemic comes by, at that time, India definitely would be better prepared than last time. But the last time, no country was well prepared. So was not India. But we
Okay.
actually quickly rose to our feet and we were able to respond to the pandemic. The same way, when the next pandemic comes around, I'm pretty sure that we will rise once again to the occasion and we'll be able to mitigate that.
Yeah. So, lastly, any quick message that you would want to give to our viewers with respect to HMPV and also other respiratory illnesses which might occur during the season, because this is the winter season.
So, number one message that I would like to give is that please do not panic. Please don't be afraid. This is not a virus that is going to reach anywhere near the proportion of what we have seen during COVID times. That is number one. So, don't be afraid, don't panic. Number two, if you sneeze or if you cough, please cover your mouth, because what happens during sneezing or coughing, you're expunging whole lot of aerosols in air, and therefore someone else who is not infected, when that person inhales those aerosols, is at the risk of getting that particular disease. Number three, keep washing your hands again and again. Number four, use mask wherever possible to reduce the risk or probability of either contacting or spreading the disease. And last and not but the least is that if you come down with your symptom of sneezing, coughing, or mild fever, please stay at home, because then you reduce the probability of transmitting that to others around you.
Yeah. Very useful tips there for our viewers. On that note, we wrap up this discussion. I'm sure it will immensely benefit our viewers and remind us that while there is need to be aware, no need to be unnecessarily worried or anxious. Thank you so much, Dr. Mande, for taking time out for this. Thank you so much. Really appreciate you being with us. Thanks.